Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to fall asleep, the more wide awake you feel? Or think about this, how the harder you hustle and grind to achieve, say, success or happiness, the more exhausted and just empty you end up feeling. We are literally living in a modern epidemic of burnout, totally trapped in this culture of endless, relentless striving. But what if there's a completely different, almost backwards way to operate? What if the secret to making a profound impact isn't doing more, but actually trying less? Well, today in this explainer, we're exploring the mechanics of a concept that flips our modern hustle culture entirely upside down.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand this alternative way of living, we have to start with a concept popularized by the philosopher Alan Watts. It's known as the backwards law, and it's basically this massive cognitive trap. It's the incredibly frustrating reality that actively pursuing a psychological goal, like happiness or peace, is often the exact thing that prevents you from actually achieving it.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The backwards law. 2. The mechanics of Wu Wei. 3. The curling sweeper metaphor. 4. Point and zoom creativity. 5. Somatic healing. And finally, 6. The drive to play.
Let's start with Section 1, the backwards law, or why you need to stop trying to be happy.
This right here is the paradox sitting at the absolute center of our modern hustle culture. Alan Watts pointed out this brilliant, yet, kind of painful truth. The harder you try to be happy, the less happy you are. And why is that? Well, because the very act of trying so hard to be happy constantly signals to your brain that you aren't currently happy. Actively pursuing a state just reinforces the fact that you lack it.
So the crucial takeaway here is this core paradox. Striving reinforces the feeling of lack. When we force an outcome, whether that's, desperately trying to fix a relationship, forcing a creative breakthrough, or demanding that we feel joyful right this second, we just create immense resistance. We're basically introducing all this unnecessary tension into the system. The effort itself literally becomes the obstacle.
Moving on to Section 2, the mechanics of Wu Wei, and the idea that the grass grows by itself.
So if striving is the poison, what exactly is the antidote? Enter Wu Wei. This is a foundational Taoist principle that roughly translates to effortless action or non-striving. Now, I want to clarify something right out of the gate here. Wu Wei is absolutely not laziness, okay? It's not apathy or just sitting on the couch doing nothing while your life completely falls apart. Instead, it means acting without ego-driven coercion. It means aligning yourself with the natural flow of existence. Think of it like a sailor catching the wind, rather than furiously rowing against a massive current.
Just look at this really beautiful observation from the 17th century Japanese poet Matsuo Basho. He wrote, "Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself." Just take a second to reflect on that. Life has its own inherent, self-organizing intelligence, doesn't it? The seasons change, the grass grows, physical wounds heal. So many processes in our lives actually flourish precisely when we just stop aggressively interfering with them.
And this brings us to a really critical distinction. On one side, we have our modern habit, right? Forcing results. This is entirely driven by the anxiety to rush in and fix things immediately, way before they're actually ready to ripen. But on the other side, we have the Taoist wisdom of discerning action. This is about knowing when to act, sure, but more importantly, it's knowing when to yield and observe, and just allowing natural momentum to do the heavy lifting for you.
Which leads us to Section 3, the curling sweeper metaphor, or finding influence without force. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it grounds everything, because effortless action can sound a bit, mystical. So let's use a brilliant modern analogy, the Olympic sport of curling. Think about it. In curling, the sweeper never actually touches or pushes the stone. There is absolutely no brute strength or coercion involved. Instead, they vigorously sweep the ice just ahead of the stone. They warm the path, they clear away the frost, and they make the way a fraction more willing. Then, they simply trust the stone to find its own line. They prepare the conditions, and then they get out of the light.
And guys, this is exactly what Wu Wei looks like in practice. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a facilitator, or a healer, your goal isn't to aggressively push the stone or the person over the finish line. Your work is to clear the obstacles. You cultivate the environment, and then you step back so the other person can arrive there on their own terms. It's influence, but completely stripped of force.
All right, Section 4, point and zoom creativity and the art of attention. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can apply the sweeper mindset to a completely different domain, modern creative production.
When you take a photo with a smartphone today, there's a shared authorship happening. The machine provides the rotational force, meaning it does the heavy technical lifting of stabilization, autofocus, and exposure. But the human provides the directional torque. The human retains the ultimate sovereign choice of framing intent, attention, and selection.
Because the machine handles all that technical struggle, a profound shift happens. The artist is no longer required to be a manufacturer of reality. Instead, they become a curator of attention. This is what you could call point and zoom Wu Wei. By completely letting go of the need to technically force a perfect frame, the human is finally free to practice deep observation, to simply notice and bless what's already present in the world around them.
Let's move on to Section 5, Somatic Healing and Grassroots Recovery.
So we've looked at ancient philosophy, and we've looked at high-tech creativity. Now I want to slow things down a bit and look at how this applies to deep, profound human recovery. This brings us to the grassroots work of Valerie Todd. For 14 years, she's led a ministry reaching into prisons and recovery rooms. And her ultimate credential? It's her own lived experience. She literally authored her recovery curriculum while she herself was incarcerated. Through her program, Drugs to Deliverance, she works not just with folks in recovery, but with the entire family unit left behind, because she recognizes that addiction impacts the whole ecosystem.
What makes Valerie's program so incredibly effective is its deliberate, unforced sequence. Most programs out there start by trying to make people think their way out of addiction. It's cognitive forcing. But her model understands a fundamental truth. You absolutely cannot reason with someone whose nervous system is stuck in survival mode. So they start with safety, then somatic regulation, literally just calming the body down. Only then do they move to cognitive work, and finally relational repair.
The physical body must be quieted before the mind can listen. You see, this somatic model is Wu Wei in profound action. You can't force a dysregulated person into having cognitive breakthroughs. You have to act as the sweeper. You calm the nervous system, you create internal safety, and you allow the healing to organically emerge from within.
Let's move to Section 6 and see how this builds into our final, most profound point, the drive to play and emergence in the shadow of grief.
How does life emerge when we simply set the conditions and get out of the way? Just look at this photograph. It's a tiny seedling pushing through the mulch, still carrying its old seed coat like a little brown hat. Now, this isn't just any random patch of dirt. This seedling sprouted at the exact base of a tree that was used as a chicken roost. It is the exact spot where 4 chickens, including Ladybird and Chickatitty, spent their final night before being lost to a predator attack. In the very shadow of that immense grief, without any human coercion whatsoever, new life decided to push through the soil.
In complexity science, this phenomenon is called emergence. And sure, we can engineer the conditions for it. We can set up that perfect edge of chaos and order. We can establish recursive fractal processes. We can set simple rules based on local constraints. We can lay down the wood chips, provide the water, and make sure the sunlight hits the ground. But listen, that is exactly where our control ends.
Because the final magic ingredient is simply a drive to play. It's the one irreducible spark of life pushing through the wood chips. It's the seedling inherently turning toward the sun. It cannot be engineered. It cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured. It can only be invited.
And that brings us to our conclusion. From the backwards law of happiness, to the way we frame photographs, to healing from deep addiction, to a tiny seedling growing out of loss, the lesson remains the same. Yielding is so often vastly more powerful than forcing. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to carry with you today. Where in your life do you need to stop being the stone and start being the sweeper? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.